Imagine surviving a plane crash, only to be killed by those there to rescue you. Hello, true crimers. This is another Final Destination case in real life. Viewer discretion is advised. Asiana Airlines Flight 214 took off from a South Korean airport on July 6, 2013. The flight would be taking its passengers to San Francisco, California. The flight itself, even though it took off 34 minutes late, it went smoothly. At 11:21 a.m., it was cleared for a visual approach at the San Francisco International Airport. However, when it came to the landing portion of the flight, it apparently was coming in too low and too slow. Apparently, the pilot then turned off autopilot and they went into manual mode, but apparently they were still going too slow. It would come out later that the pilot received very inadequate training, and he was allegedly relying too much on the automated systems. So at 11:28 a.m., the plane would crash just before hitting the runway. The landing gear crashed into the seawall, and then the left engine and the tail section separated from the airplane. The plane then basically slid down the path. There was then a ruptured oil tank, and the oil leaked from that into the hot engine, and then it caused it to ignite. Now, there were 307 total souls on board, and unbelievably, almost all of them survived. There were 187 people who did experience some severe injuries. In the end, there would be 3 reported deaths. 2 of those deaths were teenage girls who actually were thrown from the wreckage. One of those girls was Yi Menyuen, and she survived being thrown from the airplane. Her survival was confirmed by the coroner later. So what had happened was that the fire trucks were spraying the, foam everywhere to put out the fire. And Yi was actually essentially buried underneath the foam. There was a point allegedly on one of the firemen's helmet cams where they could see that she was still there and still alive. But then later she would be discovered deceased. You see, because the fire truck over there, it was driving forward, and Yi was sort of kind of where that little yellow tarp was, and she was run over. She was run over by the fire truck. Now, to the driver of the fire truck's credit, they did not see her because she was covered underneath all the foam. But later the coroner would confirm that she was killed by blunt force trauma, something similar to being run over by a vehicle. A lawsuit was filed by her family, but eventually they withdrew it.
This man killed his girlfriend in the church, cut her body into pieces, put them in trash bags, along with 2 dead animals, a goat and a dog. He then took these bags to a riverside where he dumped them, thinking no one would ever trace it back to him. 24 hours later, he and his father, a bishop of Freedom Chapel International, were exposed and arrested for the gruesome killing of a lady simply known as Anita. How the police found out that it was them who did it would leave you speechless. Around 11 p.m. on the 19th of June 2022, Apostle Kelechi Amadi called a tricycle rider to come take him home from church somewhere in Kubwa, Abuja. When the keke came, Kelechi went inside the compound and brought out 3 sack bags containing junks. He told the keke man that the bags were actually dustbins that he wanted to throw along the way, and the keke driver did not think too much of it. He charged him 1,000 naira and began the journey. It was when they got to a flyover bridge in Kubwa that Kelechi ordered the driver to stop. This was where he came down from the keke and threw the 3 bags over the bridge, hopefully to target the river, but it ended up by the side of the river where other trash bags were dumped. After he was done, the keke man continued the journey and dropped him where he wanted to go. The tricyclist did not really think too much of it. Even when the tricyclist got home to close for the day, he noticed blood stains on the seat of his keke. And it still did not occur to him, it did not register to him that something weird or off must have been in that bag that the Apostle Kelechi was carrying. So he cleaned the blood and just assumed maybe it was some sports meat from the bag. However, the next day, when the keke driver was passing the Kubwa flyover, he noticed a crowd of people by the bridge and realized that they were all staring at something. And as usual, the keke man came down from his keke to ask what the people were looking at. And that was when he was told that they saw a bag full of mutilated female remains. The bags were discovered by a group of scavengers. Earlier that morning, while they were searching for junks, when one of the scavengers saw the sack bag, he tore it open thinking he would find some valuables, only to find pieces of human body parts. When the keke man looked at the bags himself, that was when it occurred to him that those were the same bags the man he picked from the night before were carrying in his keke. That was when the blood he cleaned in his keke now clicked on his head. And instantly the keke man knew who killed the woman in that bag, and he knew the right thing to do in that instant. Immediately, the tricyclist went to inform the head of association of keke in the area. It was them who then told him to go straight to the police. By then, the police had already visited the site. They had even evacuated the body of the woman. They were also beginning investigation. But luckily for them, someone who saw something and knew something decided to speak out. And he even promised to take them to the place where he picked the man who threw the sack bag containing human remains over the bridge. And that was how the police got to the church and picked up a father and son who were ministers in that church, holding them responsible for the murder of the unknown woman in Kubwa Bridge.
How did one man manage to kill more than 50 people in the space of just 5 years in this exact same park before he was caught? Let's listen to the incredible and twisted true crime story of the chessboard killer. Alexander Pichushkin was born on April 9th, 1974 in Moscow, Russia. Initially, he had a completely normal childhood, and it wasn't until the age of 4 when he fell off a swing and the swing came back, whacked him in the head, and he suffered brain damage, damaging his prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that sort of controls your impulses and has a big role in sort of your decision making and stopping you doing things you know you shouldn't. According to Alexander's family, it was around this time they started to notice major changes in his personality, and he became so much more aggressive and hostile just in everyday situations. Keen to help his grandson's life get back on track and to help with his brain development, Alexander's grandfather began to teach him how to play chess, and this became a major passion for the two of them, and they would just be playing chess all the time together, and they would go to the local park, Bitzer Park, and they would just play chess with the elderly guys there just on a regular basis. And this was sort of the only real time where Alexander was focused, his brain seemed to work perfectly, and he was happy. Unfortunately, this would all change when Alexander's grandfather unfortunately died. To numb the pain of the loss, he turned to vodka and was drinking heavily on a daily basis to numb the pain and also just to suppress the dark and aggressive thoughts he was now getting. Alexander committed his first murder at the age of just 18 in 1992. Him and his good friend Mikhail Odachuk had agreed between them they would start killing people and just going on a random killing spree. His friend Mikhail didn't actually realise this wasn't a joke between them, and so when it actually came time to start killing people, he backed out at the last minute and was obviously a bit worried. This enraged Alexander, and he grabbed a hammer, smashed in Mikhail's head, threw him in a well, and after a brief questioning from the police, he was cleared and he'd gotten away with his first murder. Later that same year, his girlfriend Olga would dump him and go for one of his close friends. This again enraged him. He met up with that close friend, pushed him out a window, and it was ultimately ruled a suicide, so they got away with another murder. Like and follow for part 2, it's about to get crazy. The Chessboard Killer Part 2. After his second murder, he took a good few years off killing until 2001, when he turned the crazy psychopath dial all the way up to 100 and began killing people on a regular basis in Bitzer Park. What he would do is he would usually approach a homeless or elderly person and ask them if they wanted to come and have a drink with him at his dog's gravesite, because he always used to go there. This park's massive and he'd buried the dog there somewhere in the woods. They would of course go with him, but once there he would either get them drunk first or just straight away bash their head in with a hammer or a pipe, leaving a massive hole in their head. And then with a lot of his victims, he would get a vodka bottle and shove it in the hole in their head, leaving it for all to see. When he first started these killings, he was trying his best to hide the bodies in a sewer pit, but as time went on, he got more reckless, more crazy, and would just leave them out in the open on public paths for anyone to find. And, well, he got up to 50 plus kills, so clearly the police didn't really care. As Alexander's murder tally began to grow, people did eventually start to wonder, who is this Bitzer maniac? Who is this serial killer constantly killing people in the same park over and over again? And for a long time, Alexander went undetected. He was just a simple grocery store clerk, liked to play chess. His colleagues did say he was a little bit strange, but there was no real reason to suspect this man to be the major crazy maniac that's going around and terrorizing people in Bitzer Park. After somehow avoiding detection for 5 years, he was finally caught in 2006 when his co-worker, Maria Moskaleva, left a note for her son saying, "I'm going on a walk with Alexander. He's a co-worker. Here's his number in case of emergencies." Once she turned up dead, her son quickly contacted the police, who, looking inside her coat pocket she was wearing at the time of the murder, they found a train ticket that, once they went to the train station, they managed to find CCTV of Alexander and Maria walking together. This allowed them to quickly arrest Alexander and charge him with these murders. After finally being arrested, Alexander was more than happy to give the police all the evidence in the world to prove he was this big-time serial killer. Like and follow for part 3 to hear how many kills he got and why he's known as the chessboard killer. Welcome to the Chessboard Killer Part 3. As previously mentioned in Part 2, Alexander Pichushkin was more than happy to give the police all the evidence he could possibly give to help him build up his kill total. His goal was, throughout all of his serial killing, was to beat the 52 kill total of the Rostov Ripper, Andrei Chikatilo. And he was the most infamous serial killer at the time in Russia. So what he did with every murder, he would stick a number on a chessboard, and his goal was to get to 64, which, as you can see, is how many squares is on a chessboard. He managed to get up to 61, but frustrating for him and his ego, the police could only pin him to 49 murders, so he ended up falling 3 short. And this, combined with not being able to finish the chessboard, was said to deeply have disappointed Alexander. In the end, he was ultimately sentenced to life in prison, with the first 15 years of his sentence to be spent in solitary confinement, which by my calculation means he's either just come out of solitary confinement or he will do at some point this year, because he was convicted in 2007, which was 15 years ago. And that pretty much concludes the crazy, disturbing story of the Bitsamaniac / chessboard killer. What I'm going to do is leave some clips of him showing the police where and how he committed the murders, just to show you how keen he was to give the police all he can. If you like this, like and follow. There's going to be tons more true crime content coming your way, and I'm still new to this, so it's only going to get better.